Paul, Apostle of Jesus Christ, blah, blah, blah. 1 Timothy, okay. For some men straying from these things, pure heart and good conscience and sincere faith. For some men straying from these, that's verse 5, verse 6, straying from these have turned aside to fruitless discussion, wanting to be teachers of the law. And there are people on here that will tell you, it's your job, it's your responsibility to rebel against the government. Are you a Christian? First, wanting to be teachers of the law, even though they do not understand either what they are saying or the matters about which they make confident assertions. But we know that the law is good if one uses it lawfully, realizing the fact that the law is not made for the righteous person. So this is the opposite of the righteous person. Verse 9, chapter 1, 1 Timothy. Realizing the fact that the law is not made for the righteous person, but, contrast, for those who are lawless. And conjuncts that to, and rebellious. And this goes for Texas people who want to follow Christ, and anybody. When you see the government clenching down and you say, well, I'm going to fix it. God says, if you want to fix something, if you want something corrected, then you submit to the governing authorities and you submit to me. Not made for a righteous person, but for those who are lawless and rebellious. Submit, remember, to the governing authorities. The righteous person is not for the law, is not made for the righteous person, but for those who are lawless and rebellious. So, people want to say, well, I follow George Washington, or I follow the Constitution. I'm glad the Constitution, does some help to you. I'm glad you pick something up from it. And we're going to assert our rights, even if it means fighting against the government. And there may come a time where in Texas or California or Washington, I believe it said Washington, I heard somewhere Washington and Oregon, some of those states want to nullify the laws of the federal government. If that's the world, then you let the world do what the world does. But if it comes down to a battle, Jesus said to Peter, put your sword away. And we do not have the power as a state, a group of people who want to fight. We do not have the power to fight the government. We don't have the power. So even from a sensible perspective, it's not wise. But you don't rebel against the government. The governing authorities, they're in power. You trust God. If you're a Christian, the first thing to consider is not George Washington, it's not Thomas Jefferson, it's not the Constitution, it's not the Declaration of Independence. The first thing to consider is God. It's not to say, well, these people were in the right. It's to make up our own minds, hopefully. If we're following God, read it for ourselves. and know what God says about rebelling against the government and about submission to the government. And receiving praise from the government. Doesn't mean you do what's wrong, but it does mean you're not rebellious. It does mean you are submitting to the government. And of all the disinformation out there that wants you to pick up your pitchforks, some of those stuff out there wants you to pick up your pitchforks and you think that's the right thing to do, you won't be seen as in the right. And I doubt you can do much of anything other than hurt yourself and possibly your family. And I say it sincerely and wish the best.